So good morning, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It depends where you are located in this globe. As already Guillaume started introducing me, my name is Roman Garba, and my lecture will be about the Trilith stone monuments of southeastern Arabia. He described quite well what is my background, what I'm doing for the recording. I just would like to repeat. I have two affiliations with Archaeological Institute of Czech Archaeology of Sciences and Nuclear Physics Institute of the Czech Archaeology of Sciences, which seems not directly connected, but there is a bridge, and the bridge is in radiometric dating methods. So I'm trying to specialize beside Arabian Peninsula archaeology, also specializing on radiometric dating method using C14, but not only, using cosmogenic nuclides, beryllium-10, aluminium-26, or chlorine-36, which are the kind of very rare dating methods used in archaeology, but they are quite common in geology. But my lecture will be on Trilith monuments, on mysterious monuments, which are from Oman to Yemen. And this was my main topic of my PhD, which I did in Laurentale in Italy. First, I would like to acknowledge, I would like to thank many institutions and parties engaged in this research. On the first position, I would like to thank to Université Laurentale Napoli, which provides the scientific lead, and I did my PhD there. Obviously, the next thanks goes to the Ministry of Heritage and Tourism, which provided permission for fieldwork in Oman for 2 expeditions. Then Radiocarbon Laboratory of the Nuclear Physics Institute, where I did all my datings from the Trilith fireplaces. Then Archaeological Institute of Czech Academy of Sciences, then Masaryk University Brno, which provided students for supporting of excavation. Then FAMCO expedition from Adam, which they did. They helped with the excavation of Triliths, and also al-Kashbag expedition, which provided us some tools. I would like to also acknowledge and mention the supporters of this research. It was the National Museum of Sultanate of Oman in Muscat, which supported Trilith relocation from Duqm to National Museum. You will see later. Then Society of Antiquaries of London, Beatrice Descartes grant, which was received in 2020, but COVID allowed to have a field season in early this year. You will see mainly the grant was for Shalmiden for Nafun works, but we did some excavation of also, we collected some charcoal from the fireplaces. And last but not least, the CZ authority from Duqm, which this season, the last season this year, supported us with accommodation, and are now supporting us very much in Duqm. So I would like to give you some brief overview what they are, the Trilith monuments. Probably most of you already know. They are very prominent enigmatic monuments, which they are distributed from the eastern Yemen, from Ḥaḍramawt and Al-Mahra governorates, all the way alongside the South Arabian Peninsula coast up to the Ra's al-Ḥadd in Oman. They are generally like 2000 years old, but I will come back later to the age and to the radiocarbon data set. We still don't know why they were built and by whom and for which purpose. This was the original, also the aim to disentangle or just to uncover a little bit more, because it's a very difficult topic to research. To study, because there is no material culture. There are no bones underneath, no beads, nothing, no kind of traces of material traces that we can identify and can get us the clues. So the Triliths monuments are consisting of the 3 standing flat stones, which you see, and they are forming the line. And the name is Trilith, like three stones, and they are placed on a platform which is deliberately built alongside these kind of lines. Then there is a kind of composition of the 4 square stones arranged, and then you have a row of the large fireplaces or hearths. So these are the 3 main kind of components of the Trilith kind of monument. We are calling it Trilith cluster. All these kind of 3 typical kind of spatial configuration elements, and this is one cluster, and then they are in rows. There is second, third, and fourth, and it depends. In many places it's only 1 row, or in some places are, for example, 10 or 15 these kind of groups of lines of the 3 standing stones. Here you can see the distribution. So as I mentioned, it's from the al-Mahra and Ḥaḍramawt from Eastern Yemen, where is a very high concentration, going to Dhofar. Also, Dhofar was well known as a kind of high concentration. But then in 2015, when I was part of the Italian mission in Duqm, which we did the survey of Duqm survey 2015, we recorded a very high concentration of Trilith monuments, and this was a kind of trigger for my research to study those monuments. And then we have also in central and eastern Oman as well quite a lot of these monuments. And I will talk a little bit very specific case. An example is close to Al-Buraimi, which is a kind of line of monoliths. It's not like true Trilith, but it's very, very similar. Here you see on the table the list of all previously mentioned Trilith lists in the literature before. As you can see, biggest number of the aggregated Trilith sites in one place was 61 by Zarins, but also I would like to stress and mention a work of Beatrice de Cardi in 1977. She was the first who did kind of dedicated study research on where the Triliths are, did first Trilith map and so on. So then it started, but it never was studied like specifically as a focus. It was always kind of as a side kind of effect of the archaeological missions, usually the survey missions. So the research was divided in 3 main lines of inquiry. The first where it means the aim was to collect, aggregate all from the oldest available sources the locations of the Trilith monuments, and then complement by the ground survey, but also, and this was the big task and major kind of contribution to increase of the number of Trilith sites in a data set, by remote sensing, by satellite using Microsoft Bing and Google Earth, and this increased dramatically number of Trilith monuments in a database because they are visible from the satellite. Then another dimension, some kind of you can get was the collection of the charcoal from the fireplaces, from the hearths. Until this research, it was available around 9 C14 dates, and this research aimed to increase the C14 dataset as much as possible as it can be done to achieve higher temporal and spatial granularity. And then the third kind of topic of the research was the trying to disentangle the cultural associations. So there was the statistical analysis of the relationship with neighboring archaeological features or landscape features as well. Try to identify kind of, statistically the patterns, the preferences. Try to find out, what were the preferences of the builders of the Triliths. The research framework was divided into the four analytical planes. It started from in the first level, like very detailed. It was like on a Trilith fireplace level, where we excavated different even layers of the fireplace, and we have C14 dates from different even layers to also to go into micro level to have the history within the fireplace. Then the level of investigation was moved to a level of the clusters for like relationship between within the kind of Trilith monument, and then it moved to the local relationship and environment, where we studied the relationship between the Triliths and another archaeological evidence like tombs mainly, and then regional dynamics study within the whole southeastern Arabia, the kind of patterns of movements, phases, migration patterns. I will talk later about this. So the field work was divided into two expeditions. The first expedition was a dedicated expedition called Trilith Stone Monuments of Oman, TSMO, which was held from 2018 to 2020. Each season had the two field campaigns, one in autumn, one in spring. And then you can see here the areas of focus. The aim was to ground truth, to survey as much as possible the Trilith monuments in Oman. Obviously, the focus of expedition was for Oman. Yemen is not available, or is closed. Then there were specific areas of the focus, which are on the right side. You see these kind of red boxes where we spent more time, and we excavated, we sampled the fireplaces for the charcoal. The main focus area was Dukum, where we studied not only like Triliths but all archaeological evidence, including the lithic material, Paleolithic, the tombs, Shelmiden. We discovered in Nafun, Shelmiden, and overall in Nafun itself, it's incredible place. It's north of Dukum. Who've been in Berlin, he saw maybe our poster. It's kind of cultural landscape where are the Triliths, tombs, Shelmiden, rock art sites. It's a high concentration of all archaeological kind of various archaeological evidences. Then, based on the results of TSMO expedition, the new expedition was introduced, which is called Archaeological Landscape and Environmental Dynamics of Dukum and Nejd. ARDUC as a shortcut. It started spring this year. It also has one of the scope of work is also to continue in the research of Triliths, but not only the Triliths are just as one of the component. It's more about other research. It's mainly also about in southern parts in Dhofar. We have also the Rub al-Khali in Paleolithic, Lower and Middle Paleolithic research as well. But still we continue in Duqm as a kind of overall through the ages, the investigation of environment and also the archaeological landscape itself. And then we have a comparison area like the Dhofar, where we study also Paleolithic and Triliths and comparing and trying to do the inter-regional comparisons. You see here are the study areas, 9 study areas. The project or the expedition is planned for until 2028. We received a grant, until 2028. So it will be a long-term multi-year expedition which started this year. Now I'm coming to the main kind of theme, the data collection and field work outcomes. So here you can see the Trilith distribution, and then we collected these black triangles shows the collected C14 dates. We sampled much more fireplaces, but generally there is very little charcoal on fireplaces, but I will talk later about the results. So here you can see the excavation of the fireplaces in Duqm. One of the main goal of the very first expedition was excavation of this small Trilith monument in Duqm. We fully excavated this Trilith monument, and transported it to the National Museum in Muscat, where you can see it now. If you visit, you can see in the first floor. And it was kind of a little bit specific because you need to be very careful in labeling and recording, because excavation is usually a one-way process. And here we have to assemble it again, move it 600 kilometers and assemble it again in a National Museum. So it was very interesting project and exercise and endeavor. It was kind of rescue because all around was the construction site with heavy machines. So we tried to disassemble, excavate, and move to the National Museum. Also, it had a scientific research because we tried to really confirm that there is nothing below the Trilith monuments, and this is not a grave. And it was again confirmed there is a virgin soil. There is no kind of as you can see here, there is a untouched soil without any kind of material underneath of the Trilith monument. On the right side, you see here, this was done by the FAMCO team. They excavated, did some kind of test pits in other part of close to Oman, Trilith monuments, and also it confirms lack of any material below the Trilith itself. And here you can see this is a final composition, how it looks like in a National Museum in Muscat. So we brought it to Muscat and then assemble it, and now you can see it. Result of the research. So then the number of the Trilith sites in a database increased like in the years of the research, and you see from original 231 to 921 Trilith sites. So from 60 to 900, so it's a big, more than 14 times higher number of the higher data set. You can see the distribution. The biggest number of the Trilith sites is in Yemen, in Mahra, then Dhofar, then Ḥaḍramawt, and then Wusta, and then all these Sharqiya, Dalqiya governorates. Here are the highlights of some kind of the outcome of the distribution of like work package focused on distribution, some kind of very specific new things which were not published before or not known before. So I will start from the north. There is this Buraimi. This is Trilith like row of standing monoliths in Wadi Ajran. You will see on a photo later on. Then the discovery of the FAMCO team discovered the Trilith monuments in Adam, and this was a big kind of Trilith complex and new kind of dot in a Trilith distribution. Then 72 Trilith sites in Dukum, which is also new, not published before like 2017. Then extremely important discovery of so-called two-phase Trilith sites. I will have a dedicated slide which we can start identifying the age of use of the Trilith monuments, like earlier age, like the older generation, newer generation. Then we had the new Trilith sites, the very on most southern in Oman, on a plateau, affecting a little bit the Kharif monsoon. This was also in grassy area. And then, and this was probably the biggest achievement, using the satellite imagery, the identification of 444 new Trilith sites in Yemen. And this was long and heavy work, but it was successful, because 400, it's before it was like 12, 13. There are the heat map on here shows the four main kind of concentration. One is in Al-Mahra, then two are in Oman, in Dhofar. One is in Mudai, and the big is Wadi Dabun, and then Dukum as well. So four kind of concentration of the Trilith monuments. Here are the results of the statistical analysis, and the result shows that there is a slight preference to the water sources than to the settlements, and which means that we can kind of put on the table the hypothesis that the monuments were built more in a relationship with the water sources. So they were built closer to the water than closer to the any kind of settlement, or they are more connected to outdoor water-related rituals, or related close to the water. Also, here is the distribution on altitude distribution. So as you can see, there is a majority are around average altitude is 600 meters. So they are in highlands, the coastal highlands mainly, but also some kind of 89 Trilith sites are on the coast, below 50 meters above the sea level. So there is a kind of gap between. There is very little between 150 meter and let's say 400 meters elevation. So they are either in a highlands, inland, or on a coast. So that's also the orientation. The analysis of the orientation showed that there is no strong orientation preference. It's a little bit different than conclusion from published by previous researchers, because they were investigated the small area, and then obviously in this area the wadis went to the same direction, and obviously there is a strong dependency on wadi, on trails, routes. So then obviously those Triliths were oriented in the same way, but as you investigate much larger 1,000 sites or 921 sites, which are in different kind of, the bodies are going in different angles, then you see that there is no kind of strong kind of preference. It means also there is no kind of a link with celestial bodies. There is no kind of orientation towards the stars. So there was not, they were not built based on the star configuration. They were built based on trails, because there is a trail kind of leaning, you know. The orientation of the Triliths is more coupled with local trail direction than with the wadi channels orientation as well. This was the statistically contributed. Yeah, and one of the another, like, why it's not related also to the wadis, because 149 Trilith sites are not placed on wadi bed or banks of the wadi. They are just on a flat area, on a plains, on plateaus. So it means that also it's not like strictly related to wadis itself. It's wadis were natural kind of passage way of travel, but so this is the link, not the wadi itself. Here you see the kind of typical kind of the topological variations. They are kind of the platforms from Dhofar. If you go to more to the north, the platforms are just like missing or are less and less distinct. This is one of the feature. Here you can see these monuments in Wadi Arjiran. Looks like Triliths, but they are like monuments. And in Wadi Ainan, this is very interesting, kind of the capstone on the top, which resembles the frankincense kind of burner. And this was the only one kind of place where we can see this kind of things. Intra-Trilith variability, the survey, local survey, allowed to calculate, you know, how many monolith stones, how many capstones, how many standing stone and empty stone positions they were, and based on these statistics, there are some kind of outcomes that the more preserved Trilith monuments are in Dhofar and less preserved in Sharqiya Dalkia. Monolith stones are in all regions appears, and then yes, so this is like as a kind of outcome of the statistics. The monoliths, this is not much known, that they are the liberal monoliths. It's standing stone, one single put it in an axis. It's not like that two stones fell apart and one remained, because it's also rounded. It's very different, and you can identify. Capstones are on the south, not much on the north. Here, this is the really like breakthrough discovery, I would say, in Wadi Ainan, on the border between Wusta and Dhofar, where we discovered the kind of the composition of the new Trilith platform with new fireplaces, and then shifted a little bit old Trilith platform with associated very hard to see in the old fireplaces. So it seems like that someone built the Triliths, then after, and you can see from C14 dates, after like 400 years came back and built the new, probably reused the standing stones from the old platform. So this was unique because fireplace shows you terminus ante quem, the last time of use usually, and then here we had the kind of the shift, horizontal shift, so we can take the charcoal from really 2 generations, and we have the shift, and by this we actually shifted the earliest Trilith age by 200 years, because it was separated. So we can so then the like more or less like 400 BC. Before it was like 200 BC to 200 AD, and now we have it 400 BC. Then the collected charcoal was dated, and then we have a data set of the 30 radiocarbon dates from the Trilith fireplaces. We will have much more from this year season. We have another like 15 or 10 to 15, and we are still. I just received first results 2 weeks ago, and they are very promising again results. So here, until now, it was published in radiocarbon article. The results, we have the range from 410 BCE to 158 CE. Now, after the latest this year results will be shifted to 600 BCE and 200 AD. So it's widening the use. There is statistical evidence of the continuous use of the Trilith monuments through this period. There is no kind of time gap. There were challenges, general absence of the charcoal in the fireplaces. It looks like kind of ritually clean. The fireplaces are kind of ritually cleaned. Presence of humic acids. A lot of samples dissolved during the process of the sample preparation for C14 dating, and obviously there is a kind of limit that it's terminus ante quem of the fireplaces, last time of use. So you have to either go deeper and try to collect charcoal from the lowest layers of the fireplace, which happened in 3 or 4 places, or you can use OSL from the bottom of the platform stones and try, but the OSL has also some uncertainty. We'll try this method as well. So here the yield is kind of low, but still the 50%, generally the 50% of the investigated fireplaces, sampled fireplaces delivered C14 results, which is actually not so bad at the end. And the kind of the final kind of analysis was spatial temporal analysis, which because we know the location, we know the age, and then we know that the Triliths were used by the same kind of culture. So then we divided the Oman to 4 main kind of areas where the Triliths, there is a gap more than 150 kilometers between the Trilith monuments. And then we did Bayesian statistic analysis, and then it is very preliminary. We need a larger data set. Therefore, now we are collecting more C14 dates. But it seems like that in the south, in the Dhofar, there is a continuous occupation throughout the period. But as you can see, it shows that there were kind of the tribes. They moved up to the north to Central Eastern Oman, and then they were kind of moving back. They were probably pushed by the Arab tribes because these most likely were the Al-Mahra, Shahri, the modern South Arabian language speaking people, and they were pushed back down south, and then they moved back to the Dhofar. This is very tentative working hypothesis, which we need to support with more data. But it's interesting that you can start to identify the migrations of tribal migrations if you have enough C14 dates and locations. So conclusion. As of now, the Triliths are still mysterious for sure, but after this research or after this study, we know a little bit more. First, kind of the overall high-level working hypothesis is that Triliths represent a multifunctional space used in different ways or arrangements. It's very generic definition, but it's actually like this. It's kind of like desert shrine, which was used for praying, for rituals, to praying for pre-Islamic gods for different reasons and different purposes. It's the same like we have churches or mosques. They are like funerals, they are weddings, they are different events. So here also it was used in different occasions. So that's for sure. By crossing of the desert, you use it to pray to stay safely over your journey. In one places, in some wadis, when the concentration is high, certainly it was used for different purpose, for some celebrations, some feasts, and so on. So that's for sure. The results of the spatial analysis showed that there are several, I'm calling it interpretation attributes, and there is like a kind of mobility, water, and ancestor cult as a kind of interpretation attributes. It's not interpretation itself, but these kind of attributes kind of characterize a little bit more about what the Triliths were used for. The results of the spatial distribution analysis was that there are 4 density hotspots identified. There is slight water resource preference over settlements. It means that they were gathering and erecting, building the Triliths close to the water sources. So it was probably the area of people and tribes were meeting, because obviously everyone needs water. So it was the common place to meet. No intentional preference on wadis, but rather trails. Chronology, it was revised chronology 200 years earlier. We have 2-phase Trilith sites, continuous use without hiatus. Spatial temporal analysis showed possible migration patterns across southeastern Arabia. And then we have the Trilith interpretation attribute, as I mentioned, mobility, water, and ancestor cult, with occasional funerary rituals. Ancestor cult means that, and this is still working hypothesis, that the Triliths were built close to the, I have a statistical analysis, the distance to the nearest grave or tombs. And statistically, it showed that the Triliths were built not very near to tomb or close to the tomb or on a tomb or just beside the tomb. So it means that it was not part of the funerary ritual, but they were built nearby the tombs, which they were usually on the hills, on the small ridges around. So then it means that they built the Triliths to kind of talk to the ancestors, like the ancestor cult. Still, this needs to be confirmed by dating from the tombs. But even from Dukum, we have the first date, and it's clearly it's an Neolithic tomb. And then we have a Trilith which is just in the front. So they built it much later than the tomb was there. So there is a secondary burial which is most likely Samad. So they built the Trilith and probably they buried one person, but still they used the original old tombs which they were available around. Temporal link with frankincense Strait to be investigated, because the time is 100 is exactly fitting to the peak of the frankincense route, and also the distribution also shows where the frankincense was exported and distributed. So there is very likely that it was Triliths were like built by the people or caravans which they were transporting the frankincense. But the clear relationship, it still needs to be found out, especially in Dukum. We have Dukum, there is a high density of Trilith sites scattered, and there is no frankincense growing area there. So either it was 2000 years ago, or there is no relation with the frankincense growing area. That's another. So this needs to be investigated. And then What is very promising is this Nafun cultural landscape, the Nafun north of Dukum. As I mentioned, we have there Triliths, we have tombs, we have rock art, amazing rock art with inscriptions in South Arabian script. 150 inscriptions is probably the highest concentration of the rock art in Oman, and a lot of 300 figures and so on. Then we have a Shelmiden, which was probably seasonal trading station and port. We have evidence of the copper alloy objects, arrowheads, awls, pieces of fragments of the artifacts, which they are linked with the early Iron Age. Iron Age settlements like Salut, Sarj al-Hadid, and these kind of things. It's still early Iron Age, but now we have even 600 BC, the first Trilith dating. So let's see. It still needs to be investigated. And future research. So we have a kind of solid ground, but still it's not finished. So the first, maybe investigate the puzzle why there is a high density, Trilith density hotspot in Dukum. So there is working hypothesis that Dukum was climatic refugium, that was the favorable conditions from late Pleistocene up to Iron Age. Therefore, we are in this Arduk, we are studying Dukum from the really Paleolithic up to the late Iron Age, and also climate. We need to investigate the climate. Study of Nafun, as I mentioned, early and late Iron Age cultural landscape, as I mentioned, full of stuff, very interesting, very promising area for future research, and we will continue there. More radiocarbon dates, which is happening now. I think that after this year's season, we will have really good 50% more, and then we can make some kind of more firm conclusions of the spatial temporal analysis. And then very important is to start studying the more expansive historical, linguistic, climatological, and ethnographical records. These are the kind of more soft things which needs kind of studying in historical records, but also ethnographical records, in interviews with the old people, especially these Mahri, Shahri, Harsusi tribes. What is their kind of view on these Trilith monuments and so on? But this is somehow soft. I started in my research mainly on this hard stuff, you know, the location and the age, the date, C14 date. So this is kind of like scientific data which you can use and operate, but obviously this can be as a kind of a foundation, but then it needs to further kind of more soft research. And then obviously the Trilith research will not be finished fully if there will be no data from Eastern Yemen. So this is clear. As soon as will be possible that Yemen will at least will be kind of a little bit safe to go there. We plan to go there to just obviously kind of formally, officially, we tried to have an expedition there, official, and then to have to collect the samples from the Yemen. Because then we know, you know, where it started, these migrations, and or where it ended, and so on. So then, big part of the 50% of Trilith sites are still in Yemen. So we need to go there and then find out more. So thank you, and that's all from my side for today. And maybe now the questions.
Thank you very much, Roman, for your very detailed and interesting presentation that opens a lot of possibilities and questions about this phenomenon, which could be not restricted to this region, but also could concern other regions, for instance, in the most northwestern areas. So it's very very clear. And if there are any questions, maybe I will ask first my first question. Do you have any evidence or any explanation about the end of this phenomenon? For instance, because why people stopped to construct this kind of monuments at a time which does not seem to be a clear interruption in the cultural horizon of this period. So what could be the reason of the abandonment of the building Triliths?
Okay, so as it is, as I mentioned, you know, from the hearths, from the fireplaces, we have terminus antequem, so we have quite kind of sharp boundary of the last use of the Trilith like monuments, or last ritual use of the Trilith monuments from the fireplaces, when the fireplaces were used, obviously. And then all of the ages, they are finishing in 150 to 200 AD, something like this, and it's kind of rather sharp and not go more far. So then we know the kind of the edge. Beginning we don't know still, because it's kind of more hard. So we are going to older and older. Let's see how far how backwards we will be able to go from the C14 dates. But this kind of all of the sudden the termination, it's kind of difficult, you know. It might be related to the end of the frankincense trade, or kind of demise, or kind of transfer of the frankincense trade to the sea, to the maritime trade, and kind of vanishing of these long distance desert caravan routes, and then shift to the sea transport. This might be, I'm now just speculating, this can be, there might be kind of cultural shift that, you know, they changed the kind of the rituals, that they just don't need anymore the Triliths for the rituals, so then was the less relevant, or they came the culture into the area which the use of the Triliths was not part of the rituals. So it's not the people probably they were saying, but they changed their behavior. Or if the Triliths which are related to mobility, they were just simply the mobility stopped, like the long distance trade stopped, then obviously the use of the Triliths stops. You know, so these are the kind of the first kind of speculations, I would say, and we need to find out more. I would like to tell that we had newer also the C14 dates from two locations in Dhofar. We have like 14th century. All of a sudden from the fireplaces, we collected charcoal which was dated to 14th century, and which is kind of for 15th century, which is obviously from the data set point of view, it's kind of they are outliers from the statistical perspective, but it might indicate that still the kind of the tradition, kind of the worshipping of pre-Islamic gods was, especially in Dhofar, especially probably by these Mahari, Jabali people, they practice kind of rituals which they were related. But this is again speculation. It might be just occasionally that they stopped there and they say, okay, hey, this is nice fireplace. Let's make again the fire and stay here and let's make a barbecue here and so on. So yeah, this is still under question. So I think until now, to conclude, probably was related to finishing or closing or ceasing of the long distance exchange and trade, and probably shift to the sea exchange.
Thank you, Roman. Thank you. Any question from the audience? If so, please open your microphone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was really fascinating, and it ties up to all sorts of things that are across the entire Middle East. I'm looking at your picture here, and the Triliths are built in the middle of a plain. And when I look at the plain, I don't see raw materials. It looks like the raw materials are being taken from the hills, which look to be 300, 400, 500 meters away. That's already a pretty significant investment. It looks like the stones are 100, 200 kilo. So somebody's making a very, very large investment. They're moving tons of raw material, literally, kilometers in total. This is another perspective which is worth looking at in terms of the investment in what appear to be symbolic sites. So that's just one. It might be worth looking at that and coming up with some calculations on, for example, how much time would it build, how many work days of work would be required to build one typical site, and then come up with differences between sites and see what levels of investment are. That's one question. I want to ask you about your impression now. You have these sites which are consisting of 10, 15, 20 Triliths, maybe more. I didn't look at the statistics closely enough. My screen is too small to look at the numbers. Do you have any impression that they're built as one unit, so that somebody comes in and builds a row of Triliths, or that they're built over the course of 10, 20, 30 years, where each group that comes in builds a Trilith, and what we're looking at is a cumulative picture of construction over a long term?
Okay. So the first question, yeah, this is a very good question, and yes, it was always coming to my mind that it's hell of work, you know, especially some kind of Trilith configurations is incredible, you know. It doesn't look like on the photos, it looks like few stones, but it's really, it's so much effort. So therefore, like, it's not like something that passing by the desert and make fun, you know, he wants to, he's bored, so he is building just for the evening, just for fun. It's clearly really effort of many people, so it's kind of really monument. And as it is kind of a little bit spread and distributed, it doesn't look like, it's not like monumental kind of tower or whatever, but still it needs a lot of work. And especially some places, the configuration are just like incredible. There are just hundreds and hundreds of these kind of standing stones and maybe 50 platforms. It's like complete concentration. And in this, so that's is very interesting to kind of make kind of experimental archaeology to build one of the Triliths and kind of assess, you know, how much effort it can take. Maybe it's a good idea that we have to kind of reconstruct some Trilith monuments. When we did kind of excavation of this one small one, this was just small one, 3, and it took us 3 days, and it was so much effort. And then it was just this like very tiny 2 meters, and we have some 50 meters long, you know, the lines and so on. So it's really a lot of effort. So it's a good point. We will try to find some to do some kind of experimentation. And the second. It was kind of, it seems that it was done in batches, I would say. It was not like one row, another row, and another row. It was like maybe lines, you know. What you can see if you observe it, they are like same kind of preserved. They are, for example, like 3 or 4 Trilith clusters. So they are like lines of, for example, 3 groups in one line. But then there is in parallel another line, which again like 3 or 4, and which clearly is visible that it was done in different times, or it's kind of eroded, or they took the standing stone from the neighboring line and then put to their line. So it seems to me not added like after each other, but like in a sequence as in one line, but they added different lines. You know, that was the kind of very likely scenario, that it was done like that. They added, you know, and then we have some few, and this would be also another topic to investigate, to select one of this we are calling Trilith complex, the really high concentration of, where you have, for example, 15 or 20 clusters at least, or 50, really high concentration. So, for example, we have in Duqm, or we have some areas in Dhofar, and then make more C14 dates, because now we have AMS and we can very precisely, we can even now have a history within the layer of the fireplace, but we can also identify the time dependency and sequence of the building within these kind of area. This needs to be investigated still. We were focused now on to cover as large area with the C14 dates. Now probably it's time to focus on one kind of Trilith complex and make it a very detailed kind of C14 dating of the particular kind of lines and clusters.
If I can offer just one other suggestion, because
Yes.
you have the hearths, and I
Yes.
don't know if you're looking at the microscopic plant fossils, the microbotanical remains, the phytoliths.
Mm-hmm.
But you should be, because they're burning stuff there, you may well be able to pick up the microbotanical fossils, which may give you some kind of clue as to what they're burning. If it's just woody plants, then you won't be able to see too much. But if there are any grasses of any kind, or any kind of, you may be able to distinguish leaves, roots, flowering plants. You may be able to, if you can get flowering parts, you may be able to get its seasonality. So if you do some sediment analyses and phytolith analyses of your sediments from the hearths, you might also gain some interesting information. But I thank you. That was really a great lecture. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Maybe just a small comment to this. That's for sure. It's another kind of avenue of investigation. As far as what we did, I did C13, the stable isotope C13, showing which type of the plants from the charcoal, and then with only one exemption, all of them, they were the acacia trees. You know, now I'm always mixing it. The most common, I think C3, and then one was C4, and it was kind of like grass, kind of bush, which was on a border between the Usta and Dhofar. So we have only one example of the different type, but also we did the SEM and kind of a microscope SEM kind of photographs of the structure, and it all of them looks like acacia, like hardwood, but it needs more investigation. This was just like kind of more in attempt, one like kind of not structured approach. So it needs more structured approach. We have more charcoal and did it for the microscopical analysis of which type of wood it is, and also on this phytolith. This could be also interesting, because of course the key question, $1 million question, is if they were burning the incense there or not. You know, if it was really purely ritual, because we haven't found bones. We found only one fireplace from 40 or 50. We found some small bone fragments. So there was not too much used for this typical kind of how they are doing in Dhofar. They are putting meat on a stone, hot stones, and cooking it. So very likely it was kind of purely ritually used, and they were making the hearths beside, but there also there is no bones inside, like animal bones, I would say.
Any other remarks or questions? I can have one more. Did you observe some geographical connection? I mean, the settlement patterns between the location of the Triliths and the sites, settlement sites or funerary sites of the Samad late Iron Age period. Do you make some kind of analysis about this?
This could be a good question to Paul Euler, but
of course.
Yeah, there is a kind of relationship, and it was endless debate, me and Paul, discussing it, and it's kind of tricky because obviously Triliths are going up to the eastern Yemen, and the Samad culture it's only in part of the Oman, or part of the distribution. But for sure, the Triliths, they were touching or penetrating the Samad culture area from like distribution and from like area and also from time also. So then obviously the Samad culture people, they were either living together with the people which they brought the Trilith culture to say, or the Samad people might be also these Trilith people which they came to the north, but then they return back. That's also another kind of high speculation. It's very difficult to say, and I'm avoiding this kind of hypothesis because it's too early. But for sure, no doubt, the place and time is the same. So there has to be kind of a relationship or kind of dependency, that's for sure.
Thank you. Well, thank you again, Roman. And it was great to hear from you, and good luck for the continuation of your works about this topic, and also about your field works in Dukum. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And goodbye.
Thank you for
everybody.
all.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.